New satellite iPhones are coming this year, and we can't wait.
Welcome to the All Future Podcast, where we talk about everything AI, satellites now, iPhones, and
Humanoid robots.
Humanoid robots. What else do we talk about here?
Definitely iPhones a lot. Apple Vision a lot.
How are you doing, Ryan?
Good. How about you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. First All Future of the new year.
Mm-hmm.
I feel pretty good. I feel like, so we started this podcast together.
Like a year ago.
About a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all with the Apple Vision Pro. And I will say that a lot of our predictions that we talked about of how 2024 would go came true.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're seeing the same thing. We're going to see the same thing happen in 2025. So if you want to see the newest technology that's out there and how our dystopian future is sort of, forming before our eyes, subscribe to this podcast.
Yeah.
Because we're letting you know first. No matter what anyone tells you what's going to happen, we're telling you what is really going to happen.
Apparently, because Andrew's track record is pretty solid, and a lot of these predictions are coming from him. So thank you, Andrew, for all of your hard work.
So today is another one of my predictions that I've made, is that we are headed towards satellite cell phone service.
Yeah.
Now, right now, we've seen this with Elon Musk's Starlink and T-Mobile and their partnership in the United States. And they just did their first test. Do you want to tell us about this?
Well, so just for context, I guess, we already do have direct to satellite capability on the iPhone. And that's the thing that lets you send direct to a satellite. You've done this before.
Yeah. We just talked about this on an earlier episode.
When you don't have any signal, you can still send an iMessage. And it's a great thing for especially emergencies, but it's not just emergencies. You can use it basically anytime you're out of normal cell signal. And so that uses a small network of satellites that Apple has partnered with. But Starlink is a huge network of satellites that is providing great high-speed internet to areas that have never been able to have it before by having a receiver dish. But they're working on direct-to-cell satellite stuff in the same kind of fashion. But they're partnered with T-Mobile. So now if you're an iPhone or Android user, whatever phone you have on T-Mobile that can support this technology, you'll be able to get direct-to-cell satellite connection. And basically, at this point, it's kind of the same result where you're able to send messages, and then I think you're able to make phone calls on this version of it, at least limited phone calls.
Phone calls good. I think data is the thing they're working on to get better right now. Data's still okay.
And they did tests, but they've also opened up invitations. I know someone on T-Mobile who added their name to the wait list. And that already made me go like, oh, should I switch over to T-Mobile?
I know, right? Because
Yeah.
you have, I don't know how good this service is going to be, but Starlink is awesome. And if that's where it's headed,
Yeah.
how bad is T-Mobile normally to where it'll end up? But I'm thinking the same thing.
And a lot of people that travel, you travel a lot, love T-Mobile International.
International is way better. So
A lot of good reasons, but this technology is very cool because at the onset, it's going to be that thing where it provides you this service when you normally don't have service. But in the future, I think this is going to get kind of crazy where we're going to be able to receive data. I think Elon Musk tweeted about how the technology works, and it's just the more satellites they're getting up, the more coverage, and the more speed that they're able to send down into these hyper-specific areas. So you could do data in the future, and it might just really change how this entire thing works. To one, you could be covered, have internet connectivity literally anywhere, or it could also be a technology that replaces it long term, but I think that's a little further out.
yeah. So right now, this is just the beginning. And it's sort of like just one step further than what we have right now, which is the satellite service where you have to literally point your phone up at the satellite in the sky, make sure there's no obstructions and things like that. Even in this, they say that your cell phone isn't a great receiver for satellites.
Yeah.
And Elon outlines how there's a bunch of challenges with using satellite cell phone service. I would think that they're going to solve all those challenges, though, with everything else that they've done. And so, yeah, I'd put my bet on this being a a new technology that's emerging and that we'll see in the next 5 years start to eclipse everything else. And they're already making their deals with carriers. If Verizon and AT&T aren't shaking in their boots trying to find, I don't know who else you could sign with, because I don't know who else can put up a satellite network like Starlink right now.
Yeah,
But
that's the huge advantage they have is they're already the lowest cost rocket launcher out there, and so then they just use their own services that they launch their own rockets to put up tons of satellites. So they're very well equipped to be the leader in this whole space, and already tons of people really love Starlink as a service. And I think Matt, the other host on this podcast, his parents live in like rural Louisiana, and they use Starlink as their internet because it's better or was the only option.
yeah, definitely. I'm starting to find out. I was gonna, make it one of my New Year's resolutions to get a Starlink for 2025, and I found out that there are a lot of not carrier restrictions, but you have to get an international plan that's much more expensive if you want to use it all around the world.
Yeah.
So I think my thought process, because I didn't know, and to be clear to everyone else, is that if you want to use this thing everywhere across the world, sort of like it's advertised, it's not like a $150 subscription. It's like a $500 or something much more. And if you just want to be able to turn it on anywhere,
Yeah.
which for a lot of people is peanuts, like if you do that much international travel and you need that kind of data speed, that could be peanuts. But for me right now, I might just try it in the United States this year and see where we end up.
Yeah, I'm curious too. They have a bunch of different versions of the receiver satellites, and they have mobile versions, and people like to mount them on their cars and stuff. But I'm wondering if in the meantime, like let's say we get to a place where Starlink can not quite deliver direct to cell in the way that we want it, but you can just have this little puck basically that you're holding when you're out in the boonies somewhere, and then that's like your Wi-Fi receiver, and it's tiny and just a little accessory to your phone instead of carrying around a big receiver. Maybe we'll see that in the meantime before we get to it somehow receiving directly on the phone. But,
yeah, I use that right now, not for Starlink, but for a international internet plan. It's called a Solis. Or Solis is the name of the company. What's the name of the puck? I can't remember. Anyways, you'll find it. Solis.
Yeah.
And the company gets international service all over the world. I actually used it in Egypt on my honeymoon, and it still worked. And it's so like for EU plans, the second you go to Switzerland in the EU, it's technically not part of the EU. Switzerland has their own cellular plans, their own carrier services. Even people who have packages to go all over France and Germany and all over those places, you can't use your cell service in Switzerland. It's super expensive, like if we went to Mexico or Canada or something like that here. And it worked directly in Switzerland, no problem. So I think those things are great solutions. If you just had to carry like a little device around to get these satellite services better, I would definitely use that. I already use it, so I would definitely use it if it was better.
Nice.
The deal is with T-Mobile in the United States. It is with Rogers in Canada, Optus in Australia, One in New Zealand, KDDI in Japan, and then Salt in Switzerland, and Entel in Chile and Peru. But we're missing a giant player, which is anyone in the EU. And just like I said, Switzerland is not part of the EU. Switzerland has their own currency and does their own thing. My guess is they've been so hard on these companies because of regulation that they don't even want to try to start in these areas because they know they're going to get shot down. It's going to be like a 5 to 10 year process anyways.
Yeah, I'm wondering how that works with someone like Starlink. Like, are they going to say, "Oh, you're a monopoly because you own this satellite service," when no other company can really compete at this point? That'll be interesting to see that develop. But yeah, we don't have this in the EU or the UK now, so I guess in some ways that's kind of the reverse that we've seen, or it's the same that we've seen, where we're getting more features in the US as iPhone users than certain things that are being restricted in other countries. Well, but at the same time, the third-party app store stuff that they're getting over there is that could be argued as something they're getting that's a bonus that we don't get because of that. And then, yeah,
we're definitely evolving in different directions, it seems like. And, this year we'll see probably regulation get less, because of what's happening in politics. but that'll open up, more new features that might break stuff faster, or, we might see consequences to those actions. Whereas the EU is going slower, and they've decided they just don't want this progress as fast.
Yeah.
I don't think they're missing out on that much stuff yet, but we'll see how this diverges into the future.
Yeah.
And if they really are being left behind because of what's happening. Because there's not a lot of major tech companies in Europe anymore. There's ASML, which is the chip manufacturer out of the Netherlands, and that's basically it. Like everything else, there's campuses of other big like Apple or Google in Europe, but there's not really like a European tech company that's like a flagship company for them.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But in the reverse of this, there's also the opposite of this news, which is even though Apple tells us they're not spying on us and no one was listening, Siri's probably listening right now. Sorry for anyone's thing that I activated. But there is a $95 million lawsuit settlement that just happened for Apple.
Yeah. I was very surprised to see this, to be honest. Well, I guess maybe not that surprised, but I've just always thought that Apple was the good guys, I had at least had that little bit of bias within me. And when it came to this stuff, I was like, okay, yeah, Alexa's spying on us, or Google Voice, or whatever. No, it's not Gemini. What is their voice thing called? Do they have a name?
Google Voice Assistant.
Just Hey Google, I think is all you say. Yeah. But yeah, for Siri, I thought that it was. I thought also that part of why it was so bad compared to the others was because they weren't spying on us. Because it wasn't going anywhere, and it had no chance to process and learn from our data.
Well, it's bad, but it's okay because it's private.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I felt. Like, I'm taking a little bit of a hit on the voice assistant capabilities, but at least no one's listening to my recordings. But that's not the case.
That's so nice. Anyways, sorry. Go ahead.
But apparently this is not the case. Apple, of course, still denies any wrongdoing in this, but apparently it ended in a settlement.
So the details of this were that Siri was listening to your conversations, and just like anything else in that era, this is like 2019 that this lawsuit started. So it's earlier. This is like pre-COVID, right? So in that area, it was a little more of the Wild West of all these things. Like Facebook's still running rampant. I don't think we have that separation where Apple gives you that button that says ask to not track. That's like a recent development that we didn't have. And so things like Facebook could access your microphone through an iPhone and have access to anything that you're saying at any given time or that you give it access for. And all these apps were tracking you all around the internet. So as soon as they plant you with a cookie or whatever, and you give them, you know, through their agreement rights that they can track you through these other things, now all these apps have access to where you're going on the internet and all these sorts of things. And it's not that big of a deal. Like, I feel like we have more malicious stuff now with all these text bots and all these things like that than we did then. You're just getting a more targeted ad on something on Facebook. And we used to test this all the time. I was like, I 100% know these things are listening to us. Because we'd be out and we'd be talking about like something really specific, Suntory, which is Japanese whiskey, right? Have you ever seen Suntory before? It's like in the square bottle and, you know, Japanese writing on it. Very specific. I not only got an ad for whiskey, but I got an ad for Suntory after talking about it. Have never visited their website, have never done anything. This was 100% going on. It was 100% going on iPhones, but not necessarily through Apple. So like what you didn't know, and what I still think is true, is that Apple did not sell your data that it knew about to third-party advertisers, which is what this lawsuit is about. So their claim was that Apple took in your data and then gave that data to third-party advertisers to advertise you. So that's Facebook, Google, or anyone who's a social media provider, basically. And so that's, I don't think, true. What I do think happened is Facebook, in their terms of service, says we're going to access all these things, your photos, your, whatever, and you give them access to your photo library, you give them access to your microphone when you have to talk to someone through Messenger, you give them access to basically your entire phone, and then Apple allowed that access to stay on when the app's not being used, and we didn't have the option or the wherewithal that we do now to turn those things off. And so that's what I think was happening, is Apple didn't do this, but they didn't stop it. And I think that moment that they realized that I don't know if they just wanted to try to make it harder for Facebook to do their job or whatever it was, or they did something to piss Facebook off, or whatever it was. But then they introduced the Ask App Not to Track button, and when everyone is given that choice, everyone decides to use it. So
Yeah.
I think that's what ended up happening. And so in that era, that was a little more the Wild West, and someone called them out on it, and that's fine. Now we have a $95 million class action lawsuit, which means me and you and all of you out there have the ability to go to this website that they're going to create and claim your $20 of this $95 million if you use Siri in this time period.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope I did. I mean, maybe I didn't actually use it because I was just at that point like, no, it's not very good. So I'll
You're
have
just hoping still.
Yeah, we'll see if I actually qualify for this.
Yeah, I wonder how they even determine that. Like, do they have a log history of when you used it, or if you bought a product
had an
with
account?
Siri?
Yeah, bought a product with it. I don't know, but yeah, for your point about like the thing listening to us, people argue that even still today all the time, and I've read a lot about it and heard a lot that it's like potentially even more creepy that they're not listening and that they're able to figure these things out. And get it that good. But there are instances like that where I'm like, I don't think, even if it's taking the location data of you and your friends, and your friend happened to search it the next day or whatever, and then it serves it to you because you were together the previous day.
Yeah, 100%.
Stuff like that is
those
happening.
things too.
But even beyond that, I've had experiences where it's like, okay, even if I think about the craziest amount of data they have on us, this had to have just heard this. And so, yeah, that's basically what this is saying, is that maybe it was going on, and Apple apparently denies any wrongdoing, but they were letting third-party advertisers have access to accidental Siri activations.
So it was also claiming that these activations were accidental, and it was listening to things for you when you accidentally triggered Siri, and then it was listening to your words.
Yeah.
I think it does it in both instances, though. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, the accidental triggering is that it's not on all the time. But I don't believe that either.
Yeah.
I believe that it is on all the time, that if you use a word with an S in it, they can claim that, it was accidentally on. But you're using words with S in it every second, you know? So you'd have to prove literally that you have an accidental firing, like in your record data or whatever. Yeah. And everyone knows, like, if you've ever seen a Tesla crash, what happens to this record data immediately after, suddenly it disappears or whatever. So, like, if Apple is the keeper of that data, then, they can do whatever they want with that data before they give it out to someone else. So that's not really like a good record of what happened or whatever. So anyways, I think, these are all just calculated numbers. And so the settlement is probably just less than it would be to litigate this lawsuit in court for another 10 years. And that's all they care about. It's not, they don't care if they did it or not. Not even the judicial system cares if they did it or not. This is just an exercise in keeping these people honest and, trying to get this money out of them. And then Apple doesn't care if they did something wrong or not. It's just a math problem to them. So that's what's happening.
Yeah. Well, the next space that they're probably entering, which seems like it would definitely have some... I feel like if they're entering this space, they're going to have a lawsuit like this in the future. It's just bound to happen. And that is the humanoid robot space. And Apple is apparently partnering with Carnegie Mellon University to work on a new system called Armor that is specifically to assist the robots with seeing their surroundings. And I think it does it by using sensors that are in the arms of the humanoid robot.
Yeah, this is really cool. I think this is it's an instance where we just see Apple keeping the ball in the air for humanoid robots. We know they have teams on their side working with these other teams in the humanoid robot space. Earlier this year, we got so many rumors that they were entering the space, that this is like the wave of the future. And then they started describing weird stuff that's like, oh, really what we mean by a robot or humanoid robot is a screen that moves.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, that's not a robot. Like, why would you call that a robot? Or why would you say that that's robotic? So we got really weird things happening, but Apple has to be working on it in the background. It's going to be such a huge product category of the future that they have to be working on something. And this just keeps the ball in the air that they are really working on these things. That they're not like, if Tesla has Optimus, they're not doing nothing. We don't know how far behind they are. They're probably far behind, but this at least shows us that they have teams on the ground working on these things today.
Yeah, and they're working for the latest technology and everything that they're seeing out there by partnering with Carnegie Mellon. But that's always the interesting thing with Apple versus another company is they, for the most part, aren't going to show us something that's not like pretty functional. Versus Tesla, they literally showed us before they had anything. They showed us what the example of the robot
the guy
would be.
in the costume,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. And we've seen every stage of their development. I mean, just recently they shared a video of it walking like down a hill.
Oh.
And then it like stumbles and catches itself. And it's pretty crazy to watch because it is kind of a similar way of catching itself to a human. It's just every step is very awkward looking because most walking robots still look pretty awkward.
Yeah.
To humans, which makes sense because we know how to walk, you know. We are the experts at that.
We're the walkers.
But yeah, so you see every stage there versus Apple. Who knows how far they could have, like you're saying, screen with a pivoting arm is where they're at with humanoid robots.
Yeah, exactly.
But maybe
It's an arm.
but maybe they have something in development right now, and we'll see a few years down the line something exciting there.
Yeah, we've seen like kind of a stall out in the humanoid robot space. We've seen many more companies come to the playing table. There used to be only like one or two, Factor and Optimus, and maybe a couple more.
Boston Dynamics.
Yeah, Boston Dynamics, and then Amazon's Digit Robot, and these are like 4 major players that are going to be used. And then a lot of other Chinese competition started to come up that looks really good. It looks. There's probably a ton of stuff under the hood that's different that everyone's doing. It's just hard for us who are not mechanical engineers to see that on the face of it. And I say things like it's stalling out, but who knows like how much technology that thing self-stabilizing itself, took to walk down that hill. So it just looks like from the outside it's, plateauing because we don't see like a good new demo every 3 weeks like we see with AI sometimes. And so I still think it's a incredible space for the future. Now it's hard to pinpoint where that exponential growth is going to come in and where we'll see these things like actually perform a task that's similar to a human. Because right now you still see, the Amazon Digit robot works in their warehouse and it's moving boxes and like, packaging around, and it's still like very slow and very, it's like you could see if you were running this thing all night and it worked for 8 hours that it's still going to accomplish something. And if you had to pay it way less than a human, that it would, make some kind of sense, but it's not better than a human right now. Like no one's losing their job to this robot yet,
I think the connection will be once like Boston Dynamics level functionality in the robots connects with a brain, like an AI developed thing that actually can make decisions on the spot. Because most of what we've seen from Boston Dynamics, it's like performing something that is predetermined and it's really good, but it's like to a certain level predetermined or controlled versus if it can be performing a task in a factory, dealing with factors and things that move around and making decisions on the fly and have all of that dexterity, that's when we'll really, I think, get to the next level. And it seems like a couple years we'll be getting to that level. But for right now, kind of stalled.
Yeah, just stalled out. Nothing bad. It's actually good for everyone. We have more time to think about how to implement this kind of stuff. But and then I think people are rethinking the humanoid robot shape, like Matt talks about a little bit more. And, it might be more of a traditional robot arm approach to some of this stuff, or a robot that doesn't even look like a humanoid robot. So it doesn't, it could be just like a big square robot. Have you ever seen the Hive?
No.
The Hive is the coolest, craziest looking thing ever. So it's like if you designed a shipping factory from the ground up, and it's like, you just see like the ceiling space, and it's all these just square-shaped robots, like zooming around a grid, and that's why it's called a hive. It looks like a beehive, right? And stuff like comes in, drops from the top, and then this thing like shoves it over here, and then it's just all in this grid system. It almost looks like a claw machine or something, like. And then it falls down through the floor into these things where it needs to be, and then it ships them out to where it needs to go. So it's like a digital mailroom or something like that, but for big packages. It's wild. If you haven't seen it before, look up the Hive. But like the whole building is now designed for only robots. Yeah. And so like that might be more of how the future looks than trying to readapt all these, factories that we have now built for humans for, But we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see what happens. I think it's going to be all of those things.
Yeah. Have you ever been to BH Photo in New
No,
York?
no, I've heard about it though.
It just made me think of that. It's way different. Obviously, it's not like an optimized thing like that, but it's very cool because it's like a 3-story, very nice video and photo store. But a huge part of their business is online retail, so they have like the conveyor belts
Yeah.
all around and like in glass coverings, so you can see it and you can see it getting auto sorted and stuff. It's just kind of cool. But that's where we're at right now. Soon enough, humanoid robots might be coming, and maybe they will be connected direct through Starlink.
Oh yeah, that'll be the day.